Thom Hartmann here on the best of the rest of science and green news. You need to know this. The climate crisis is no longer a problem for the distant future. According to some of the world's leading scientists, we could face a perilous climate shift within just a few decades rather than some far-off century. Last week, new findings were published in a European science journal called Atmospheric Chemistry and Physics. That research led by NASA climate scientist James Hansen has provoked an intense debate about how quickly we must act to prevent the worst-case climate scenarios. Since at least 2009, countries around the world have been working to keep global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. But Dr. Hansen says that figure keeps us on a dangerous path toward destruction. According to Hansen and 18 other scientists, the last time the Earth reached temperatures slightly higher than what we're seeing today, large chunks of polar ice disintegrated and sea levels rose between 20 and 30 feet. And those aren't the only consequences we could fear. These scientists warn that if we continue to burn fossil fuels at the current pace, we could soon see fresh water pouring into the oceans, which would disrupt the ocean currents that regulate global temperatures and set the stage for powerful superstorms unlike anything that the modern world has ever seen. And all those effects would strengthen so-called positive feedback loops, which would only speed up the destruction of our planet. Dr. Hansen and his colleagues say that we must do more to prevent further warming. However, some of his fellow scientists have expressed doubt over these recent findings. Some question whether he has skewed his research for political purposes, but they're also not exactly saying that he's wrong. Whether it's decades or centuries, the data shows that we must act now to leave our planet habitable for future generations. Tomorrow's climate crisis has become today's emergency, and we better respond while we still can. Congress may be working to protect Monsanto, but General Mills is listening to the American people. According to a recent press release on that company's website, consumers all over the country will soon know more about what's in their favorite cereals. The Minnesota-based food producer will join Campbell's Soup and inform consumers, when their products contain GMO ingredients. Rather than wait to be forced to label GMOs, that company is putting that information on their packaging voluntarily, starting now. Despite the fact that General Mills spent more than $1 million trying to block a GMO labeling law in California, and despite their lobbying efforts against national laws, that company is finally doing right by consumers by providing this important information on their packaging now. Gary Hirschberg, chairman of the group Just Label It, said, quote, "If large companies like General Mills and Campbell's are accepting that this is what consumers want, then so should our political representatives. It's now time to put this debate behind us and realize that the citizens have spoken," end quote. Minnesota is protecting the pollinators. According to a recent article in the Minneapolis Tribune, Minnesota's State Department of Agriculture has linked insecticides to damaged beehives. And in what's being hailed as the first test of a landmark environmental law, Minnesota even compensated 2 beekeepers whose hives were hurt by toxic dust from nearby cornfields. That insecticide is used to coat most corn and soybeans in America to protect the plants from insects in the soil. The chemical is so powerful that it remains with the plant as it grows and makes the entire plant poisonous to insects, including bees. When a Minnesota farmer used that insecticide on new crops, the 2 beekeepers immediately experienced a major die-off. Days later, tests on the dead bees showed that they carried high levels of that toxic chemical. So considering that beehives all around the country are experiencing similar die-offs, Minnesota could be setting an important precedent for protecting bees. Without bees, we wouldn't have many of the fruits and vegetables we rely on for food. And it's great that one state is doing their part to protect the bees. Australian scientists are raising the alarm about severe bleaching of the Great Barrier Reef. According to the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, substantial levels of coral mortality have been documented after higher than average ocean temperatures in that region. Scientists say that it's possible for the reef to recover, but it would require us to speed up the global shift to clean, renewable energy. Burning coal and other fossil fuels is contributing to rising ocean temperatures and acidification, and the coral species can't survive those changes. Australia's Independent Climate Council chief Tim Flaherty said, "If we continue to burn fossil fuels and warm the climate, we are likely to lose most corals worldwide in as little as 30 to 40 years. To prevent this tragedy, most of the world's fossil fuel reserves must remain in the ground," end quote. For the sake of our species and for the Great Barrier Reef, I hope we're listening. And finally, solar power advocates say that the future of solar is low-income communities. Like many new technologies, solar panels have been too costly for many middle and low-income Americans to purchase or install. As more people move to solar, the price drops, but that doesn't help people who don't own homes or who have no access to a lawn or rooftop that could house a solar panel. That's why advocacy groups say it's time to rethink the solar business model and open up financing options that make panels affordable to more individuals. By expanding the investment tax credit or allowing low-income communities to share the cost of new panels, we could increase the use of green energy and lower power costs for many Americans. And as Amit Ronan of George Washington University's Solar Institute pointed out, when you talk about new solar panels, you're also talking about local jobs. That makes these types of programs a win-win for local communities. If we want to make the switch to cleaner, greener energy, we must explore all the ways to make that energy affordable to everyone. And that's the way it is for the week of March 28th, 2016. I'm Thom Hartmann on Science and Green News.